attempt to start over again. I'm sorry that I wasted an hour of y'all's life with these technical difficulties, but let's see if we can get through this. Let's see if we can get through it. So we're going to switch back over to the camera 3. We're going to switch back and put me down in the bottom left corner here. And knock on wood, we have no additional issues. Okay. Oh, I'm so sick right now. All right. So as we were going through here and everything, we were in the process of once again replacing the bad stars with the good so that we can move on. I mean, that's just a small part of the project. We've got a lot to cover. So once again, I'm going to quickly go through and snap the center of the stars to these snap points here and try to get them replaced as quickly as I can to get us back on track to where we were. But we started buffering during the cleanup of the stars, so at least you'll get to see that part again. And I got to move that one, but each one of these vectors have a center point, and basically I'm snapping to that center point to add the new star. Okay, almost there. Oh, missed that one. Control Z to undo. There, there, and there. Here, just pick a spot there and there. Okay, got one up here. Pick a spot. All right, everything looks good. Now, those were created on a separate layer, so I can go ahead and turn that layer off for the moment. And, oops. I can go ahead and turn that layer off, and that will allow me to go in and remove the old stars, right? So I'm going to go through and remove these. Oop, not that one. And I'm just selecting them, making sure whatever I want to select is 100% in the selection window, and then I can come back. Now I'm going to go into node editing once again, and I'm going to just go through and I'm literally randomly picking a spot to cut the vectors. Okay, all I'm doing is I'm cutting the old star shape from the other vectors so I can remove that. And I want to close these off, and I'm using a smooth curve for most of them. When we get to that fray in the middle, I'm going to use a straight line to join those vectors. But here, again, I'm just going to cut the vector. That way I can select that vector and delete it, and then come back and join this one, close it up with a smooth curve. Over here, again, just picking random spots just to get it cut and out of there, because I'm going to be blending this little fray back with the new star. Okay, down here, pick a spot, cut the vector on this side, come over here and pick a spot. I can remove that. I can come in and remove that and that. Two more. Again, just picking random spots to cut the vectors. Okay, get rid of that lower half, get rid of that upper half. And then that just leaves this one down here. All right. Now, notice on this one down here and the ones in the fray, I didn't join them back together. Only the ones kind of on the outskirt here, just in case I forgot about them or something like that. But let's turn the other layer back on. Okay. And let's go up here and kind of fix things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join this with a smooth curve. Join with a smooth curve, just so it kind of pulls into that star a little bit. And I'm actually going to kind of pull it up some here. And then I'm going to take my scissors and literally kind of trim those two together. So it's got that little tear in there, right? Over here, where I'm overlapping on these frays and stuff, I'm just going to take my scissors and connect that together here and up here. Okay, doing good so far. All right, we're going to come here, connect that to that fray, and now I want to join this vector with a straight line just so it shoots across that star, so I can take my scissors and connect those areas there. Right? All right. Now that leaves me with the fray here. So I'm going to start from the right and work my way around. I'm going to select the upper vector and this vector here and join with a straight line. And then this vector here, join with a straight line. I'm going to take the scissors. While I'm here, I want to work in this area while I'm here. So it's basically everything inside the fray is getting cut away, along with these lines here and there. So it's basically just kind of connecting that fray in there. Now, this one again, like before when I created a joined with a straight line, it joined it at this end, and I don't want to do that. So I want to go back into my node editing, and I want to remove this span. I want to delete this span here, and I want to take this line, let's get out of node editing, and this line, join with a straight line once and twice, and then take my scissors and again cutting everything away that's inside of this kind of fray, if you will. Right? Now, the fray is going to end here, and that's fine because I have these other two vectors, this one and this one, that I'm going to join with a straight line twice so I can trim that. Okay, to connect that. Now, the whole purpose for that is because I didn't like the way the stars came with the graphic. I want them to be tight and right, you know, even though it's a torn and tattered, you know, flag, if you will. I want it to be, you know, still I want my stars to look good, right? So now here's where I want you to start thinking about the way we can combine different things and the way we can do things. I'm going to combine a couple of graphics with this torn flag. The torn and tattered flag is kind of the centerpiece of it all, if you will, right? But imagine, bear with me here, if I came in and took, let's go into our clip art, and I'm going to make sure that I save my work here in just a minute. Now my clip art is struggling to open. That's why there's a little bit of a delay when I click there. And I think it's because I'm sharing the same folder with the Aspire and also my desktop that I train in and everything. So it's, you know, it's there's a lot of crossing over, and I think it's kind of struggling when I click on it. But the with this flag, I've kind of got a vision of I'd like to have a couple of things in here. Kind of, I just want like an American theme, an Americanized theme, and I'm going to bring over the. Let me see where she is. I'm going to bring over my Statue of Liberty here. And I'm going to size her up. I'm not sure exactly. I'm kind of undecided yet where she's going to go. But for right now, I'm going to put her here. Okay? Now, all things American and stuff, I'm actually going to have some text on here too. Right? So I'm taking all these elements to create something kind of visually that someone might like, right? And then I'm going to show you how we blend everything together, just like from our other classes and stuff. But the next thing that I want is I would like to have an eagle head, or could be a deer. That's American, right? But I'll do an eagle head. And I have two to choose from. I have this one or this one, right? I have two kind of to choose from. And I think I'm going to go face on, where it's kind of staring me in the face, right? So, and that's going to kind of, it's not going to really be, it's going to kind of be the centerpiece somewhat. I'll go up a little bit high here. And I want to make sure, it's important that I don't lose kind of some of my flag. I want to, it's the background, right? I want to keep that, a majority of it there. So I want to make sure that I don't lose it. But now I want to I want to add my text in. And I think it would be cool if my, let's see, I think it would be cool if my eagle head was kind of over here. The text was kind of down the middle, and the Statue of Liberty here. Now, I think where my problem is as far as creativity is I don't want to cover up the stars too much or lose too many of the stars, but it's okay. Here's what we're going to do. Let's get the two graphics that we already have on the board immersed in with everything else, and then we'll add our text in and we'll blend that also. Harvey says, is your drive a network or serial drive? I had a large graphic on a network drive and I had all sorts of problems. My drive is a SD drive. I have 6 different SD drives, if that's what you're referring to, for my external drives. I'm not sure. But here's what we want to do. Just like we did in past classes and all, we're going to blend the graphic in with, with one graphic in with another. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure that my flag, so I'm going to turn off the eagle, turn off the Statue of Liberty. They're grouped together. But I want to make sure that all the vectors of my flag are grouped together. Very key. May have to do it twice with each item that we kind of connect with it. But I'm going to start off with the eagle first. And I think I'm going to move the eagle. Let me see something here. Man, it's kind of a toss up. All right, we'll use this guy. He's going to go right there. He's going to be sized down just a little bit because I do want to see some of the stars, right? I like to see some of the stars on the outer edge. That's good. All right, we're going to start with the eagle. Now, the eagle is going to get ungrouped, Okay, we're going to ungroup him. And we need the outside vector of that eagle selected. So that outside perimeter of that vector selected. And we're going to offset that outside vector outward. And I'm only going to offset by 1/8 of an inch. That's kind of my magic number. So I'm going to offset outward 0.125. Okay. Now, that newly created offset is my trim boundary for my flag. So I will select the flag first. I will select that outside boundary that I just created of the eagle last. Okay. And before I do that now, I want to do one thing for myself to make it easier on me. I want to reselect my eagle except for that outside boundary. And I want to regroup him back together. That way I don't have to deal with all these loose vectors and stuff later and everything. So I want to group him back together. So I've selected the eagle. And because the flag is grouped, I can select just the eagle. And I can hold the shift key down and turn off that outside vector and have all the vectors of that eagle selected. So that way I can group them back together. That way I don't have to deal with that in the mix. Because when I do this trimming, all the vectors for the flag are going to be ungrouped during the trimming process, right? So I don't want to have to deal with the ungrouped vectors of the flag and the ungrouped vectors of the eagle. That would just be a headache for me. So select our flag, select our outside boundary of the eagle, and we're going to trim clearing inside that boundary. Okay. Now, once we do that, we can now delete that outside boundary. I don't need it anymore. The sole purpose of that boundary, that offset that I created, was just for the trimming function. Okay. All right. Now, same thing with Miss Lady Liberty here. We're going to ungroup her, but before we do, remember the flag has been ungrouped during that process, that trimming process. So I want to reselect the flag. Hold that shift key down, turn off Lady Liberty, turn off the eagle, and group. G for group, or we can go to the group tool over here. G on the keyboard, your keyboard shortcut. I want to group that flag back together. And now, Lady Liberty, I'm going to ungroup her. And I'm going to take that outside boundary and offset it. And again, I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch. Offset outward, 1/8 of an inch. Okay. Now, I only want the outside boundary or outside offset here and everything. So I'm going to, once again, select, well, first of all, let me turn her off for a minute and make sure. Yeah, I'm going to turn off that offset for a moment. And you see all of the pink that is this selected here? Those are other offsets that were created. I don't want those. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the delete key on my keyboard. I turned off that outside offset for a moment, hitting the shift key and clicking on it. I'm going to hit delete to get rid of those. And then I'm going to come back, select Lady Liberty here and deselect. Hold that shift key to turn off that outside boundary. And I'm going to group her back together. Okay. And then once again, select the flag first. Our boundary offset last. That's our trimming boundary. And we're going to trim clearing inside that boundary away. We want to get rid of everything inside that boundary. Once we do that, we can turn off that outside boundary that we created. The sole purpose of that outside boundary was just to create that offset to trim to. Okay? So now we have our two graphics here. Now, I'd like to, and this would probably look good with an actual real flag too, but I'm going with the torn flag. I'd like to add the text in here. So once again, I want to select all the vectors, hold that shift key down and turn off Lady Liberty, turn off the eagle, and group that flag back together. Group. Now, when I bring the text in, if I come in here, I've got a notepad document with some notes in here. I have the poem or song, however you want to call it, of America the Beautiful. Right? Not the whole song, but up to the second verse, I guess you would call it. And I could go with the whole song, but I'm just going to go with this much here. And I'm going to copy that text. Now, I'm going to create a box, if you will. And this rectangle that I created is kind of representing where I want the text to go. Okay? Everybody still with me? We're not buffering, all that good stuff. Wonderful. So I'm going to kind of go here. And I'm going to open up my text within a vector box tool. Text within a vector box tool here. And I'm going to paste that text. And I want to use, I don't want to use a script. I want to use just a regular kind of font, you know. And what I'd like to do is this font will be fine. It's an Oswald Demibold. That's good. It's fine. Let me look at everything. Yeah, it's good. You can do script, right? We could do something that looks, kind of has that American scribe, script to it too. I have a font like that, but it's very rough. It is called American Scribe, right? So it looks like that, like the, old-timey Constitution type text and all. Nothing wrong with it. I could use that for sure. I would like, I don't know. Maybe that would probably, because the flag is all torn and tathered, maybe that would be the way to go. And all. And yep, there still are some flag rips in her right here. We'll get rid of those. Thanks for pointing those out to me, John. And stuff. We'll remove those in just a moment. I think, yeah, maybe we go with the older text. I think, yeah, maybe we go with the older text because the flag is all tathered and torn. I don't know. Any votes from y'all? Okay. Let's go with the older text. And what I'd like to do is I want to break the text block into lines, individual lines and all. And I'd like to make the title a little bit bigger. It's okay that I'm outside of my box because it's not part of the flag. It's up here. And all of the rest, I want to move that down a little bit. Now, the square vector is going to be, we're going to trim the flag, away and all around this. But I think what might be cooler is if I did an offset of the text once I get everything moved the way that I want. I think it'll kind of be a more natural flow. Okay? So, what I want to do is, I don't want the line, I want to kind of have the lines where they kind of flow a little bit. So I'm going to use my arrow keys to help me out here, but I want to kind of come over to the right, and I'd like to see the lines have a bit of flow to them. I'm going to keep America center there. Let's go this way with this one. That I have no choice. It's one big line, but I am going to move it over some. It's okay that I'm outside of my box. You'll see in a minute. Let's move this over. Move this over a little bit. Move this over a little bit further. And then this over here. And that in the center. So I think that'll have a pretty cool flow to it. Now I'm gonna take and get rid of the box. The box was just used for kind of getting the text to size. So when you use the auto layout, which is the draw text within a vector box, it'll shrink the text to fit within that boundary area. And so now what I'm gonna do is, on my text, I'm actually going to select all the text and do an offset. So if I do an offset outward, I'm going to actually go, well, let me see what 1/8 of an inch looks like, and then I'll determine if I want to go more. So I'll offset 1/8 of an inch and everything. And let's see what happens. And I gotta not forget to save, because if it crashes right now, all that work is for nil, right? So when it's done doing the offset, I'm gonna stop for a minute and save my work. Okay, 1/8 of an inch wasn't enough. The 1/8 of an inch only kind of circled around each individual word, so not enough. So we're gonna close and we're gonna hit undo. Right now, I'm going to just take a minute and hit save, just to save those changes. All right, so we're good there. And I'm going to do an offset this time. Let's go 0.3 and do offset. What I'd like to see is a box kind of go around all the words that have that has a bit of flow to it, if you will. That's what I'd like to see. So let's see what happens. Okay. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. I can work with this. I'm going to work with this. So I want to hold the shift key down and turn off the outside boundary. I want to turn the shift key off. Turn the shift key off. I want to hold the shift key and turn off the outside boundary. And everything else that's selected, all those other offsets, I want to hit delete. I want to get rid of them. I just want this organic boundary right here. Again, that's going to be my trimming boundary. Okay, my trimming boundary. So, one more time, we select the flag, select the trimming boundary last, trim, clearing inside that boundary to clear away those vectors. And while the trim vectors are still selected, I want to hit group, and then I can delete that boundary, right? Almost looks like a mess, but it actually isn't. It actually should look really nice when it's carved. Okay, now I need to get rid of my overlaps here, so I'm going to create a new layer, and this is going to be my welded text layer, and I want to make sure it's active. Okay, make sure I can see it up here. Make sure it's highlighted here. That means whatever I do next is going to go onto that layer. And I'm going to select my text again. Okay, make sure I didn't miss any lines. Okay, now I'm going to come over here and hit weld. And it's going to ask me if I want to replace or keep. I'm actually going to keep the original. Okay, because the welded text went on the welded layer. So if I turn my layers off for the moment, if I turn my layers off, you will see on that welded text, all the welded text is here, right? So I want to turn that off temporarily and come back into my new design. I want to select my text again. And I want to move it to a new layer, and I'm going to call this my original text. Just in case I need to do something with it. Text. And I'm going to make that layer invisible. I don't need it visible because I'm going to turn on my welded text in there to fill in. Right? All right. Let's take a quick second and go into here and let's ungroup our flag so we can remove, there's two vectors that were still inside of Lady Liberty here. We need to go in and kind of clear them out. So that one and that one. And again, I can select everything because everything is kind of grouped together. I can turn off Lady Liberty. I can turn off the Eagle. I can turn off America the Beautiful, and I can drag and grab my text here. Of course. Hold on. Let me turn it off this way. And all of my vectors that are selected, let me turn that back on for a minute. Let's do that one more time. Shift key, turn off Lady Liberty, turn off the Eagle, turn off this, and I want to turn off the layer of my welded text so that everything else that's selected here, I can group it, G on the keyboard, right, to group that back together. Okay. Now, let me undo that because I grouped it on the welded text layer. Don't do that. So let's go back in and turn that layer back off. Let's select this. Turn this off, and that off. Go into our layer, which it was actually drawn here on new stars. Everything was drawn on new stars, but we're going to group it on that layer. Okay. Now, let's do a little bit of layer cleanup. So, layer 1, nothing's on there right now, just that eagle head from earlier, right? We can get rid of that for now. So, new stars, when I brought those new stars in and I started working with this flag and welding and, trimming, not welding, but trimming and stuff, I was still on that new stars layer, so all those trimmed vectors and all got put onto that layer. So that's actually my new layer. So I'm going to rename that my main design. And I'm going to delete that layer 1. Okay, so I got my main design here. And I'm going to delete this bitmap layer. It's not necessary. And my welded text is the welded text. And then I have the original text as well, too, in case I need to do something, right? But we'll leave that turned off. So let's now select this entire design. And for the most part, the detail is going to look good with a 60-degree V-bit, but I actually want to do my text with a 22-degree V-bit. So we are going to do let's turn off the welded text layer for a minute. We're going to do all of this. Okay. We're going to do all of this with the 60-degree V-bit, and the welded text we're going to do with a 22. Okay. Here we go. let's go over and see what we've created by bringing all these things together. V-carve toolpath. I don't need a flat depth in here, but I want a flat depth. I want my stripes to only carve 1/4 of an inch deep maximum. So I'm going to put a flat depth in here of 1/4 of an inch. Use an 1/8 inch end mill as a cleanup bit. Calculate that toolpath. All right, now this is saying I have some layers and vectors that are overlapping. It's saying, it might, result in unexpected behavior. Do I want to continue anyway, or do I want to use the vector validator? I'm going to use the vector validator just to see what it is. Most likely it's miscellaneous stuff because we did a pretty good job of cleaning things up, but I will go to the vector validator and I will search that selected to see if it can identify it. Everything is currently grouped together right now, right? So it may not identify all of my issues, but it'll identify some. And the trouble areas are these little figure eights. When I traced, the trouble areas are these little figure eights. When I traced Lady Liberty, we've got some buffering. When I traced Lady Liberty, she had some vectors. So the vector validator yes, and the title is overlapping. I have not welded that together yet. You're absolutely correct, Rodney. So the Lady Liberty had some issues in her hand. These little figure eights, those are the overlaps, right? But Rodney also pointed out that I have not welded the title either. So in the vector validator, it pointed out this in Lady Liberty. So I'm going to take Lady Liberty for a minute. I'm going to ungroup her, U for ungroup, making sure I'm in the main design here. And I'm just going to zoom in and I'm going to clean up these figure eights where they're touching. All of these square vectors can be removed. They're all trash. All the square ones are trash. They can be removed. But that's what these little figure eights here, where the squares are touching together, that's what was giving me my reading. Or my issue. All right, so there's one right there. All right, let's look at her hand. And we're good to go there. Come down here, all these square vectors, I can remove them. They're trash, they're pixels. All these square vectors here. There's another one of those kind of figure eight. Now, only the square vectors are the trash. The ones that actually have some shape to them, they're part of the design. So I'm just cleaning her up. I don't need to go crazy with it because it's really not going to affect the design that much. But might as well just take a quick minute and clean her up. Okay. So, looking good there. There's one right there. All right, for the most part, I'll get a warning, overlap warning on the vectors when they're actually touching other lines. All right, for the most part, she is cleaned up. Okay, good enough. All right, I'm going to reselect her and group her, G on the keyboard, group her back together. Let's go back and let's fix our text now. And for this, All right, I actually want this text because I want to carve this with a 22-degree V-bit as well. So I actually want to be on the original text layer with this. And I want to move that to that layer. Move to original text layer, this part. And I want to go to the welded text layer and make sure it's active. Okay. And I want to, oh, I don't want to move it. I want to weld. Make sure that layer is active. And I want to keep. So that way, that welded text will be on that layer as well. All right. Very good. Okay. I'm going to group it together. No big deal. Group it together. All right. One more time. Let's go ahead and turn off the welded text layer for a moment. Let's select our design and calculate that toolpath. Starting at 0. Start depth of 0. Flat depth of 1/4 of an inch. 60-degree V-bit with an 1/8 inch end mill. Calculate. But Aaron and Rodney, you guys pointed it out. Yes, we did have to weld the top text. I'm going to go ahead and continue anyway. There's a few little vectors that I missed in her, but they're not going to affect the overall design. So there's a lot of vectors there, so it's going to take a second to calculate. All right, let's preview that visible toolpath. Okay, so you can see that carve so far there. If we added some color, I'm just going to add some black to it so you can see the carve so far. Right. All right, let's go ahead and add some text in there now. Let's go back to our welded text layer and turn that on. I'm actually going to turn the main design off for a minute so it makes it easier for me to select my text, right? And this is going to be a V-carve toolpath, no flat depth, and I'm going to use my Whiteside SC50, Sierra Charlie 50, 22-degree V-bit, and no end mill. And we're going to calculate this. I'm just going to call this text 22 DEG V-bit and calculate. All right, so there's one duplicate vector. I actually want to see what that duplicate vector is. I'm going to ungroup this for a minute. Make sure I'm on the welded text layer. Ungroup. And I want to right click and select all duplicate vectors. Now, I just told it to select that duplicate vector, and I'm going to tell it to zoom in to the selected vector. And it's here. That little vector right there that's on the G and though, that is my problem. Got a little bit of an overlap right there. Okay, so, all right, one more time, calculate, continue, there's some overlap still in the G's and all. This scribe text is really dirty text. American Scribe is what it's called. Really dirty font, and there's a lot of little bitty loops and stuff. But I've never had it be an issue. I've never had it be an issue with me with the text itself. But because the font is so small and it's a scribe and everything, I want a 22 degree V-bit. Let me turn off the color for a minute. And let me turn up. Okay, it's already turned up. The 22 degree V-bit so I get some depth and definition in that text. Right? I want some depth and definition. In the 60, it would have been too shallow. The 22 is going to give me a little bit more depth and definition so that if I did have any sanding that I needed to do or anything, you know, I'm not going to sand away my design. But so here is our first design. Okay, let's add some color so everybody can kind of see it. Right? Not bad of a, you know, not that's a pretty cool looking sign. I mean, you know, I had something similar to this at the wood show in New York, and I had so many people wanting to buy it and everything. And I said, no, I literally had just carved it, just painted it at the show, and people wanting to buy it. I think I had like 14 offers or something like that. And I said, no, I said, it's our display, you know, I wanted to show it, but it was somewhat similar to this. It had Mount Rushmore, it had the Liberty Bell in there and all kinds of things. You know, so, but that's not a bad looking sign, right? Give me a thumbs up if you agree. Okay, so taking this concept here, we're going to do something else. A little bit of creative thinking, and we're going to blend some things together. So first of all, first thing I'm going to do is hit save, right? And then I'm going to create, let that save. Then I'm going to create a new project. Right? I'm going to create a new project. So hopefully that got some wheels turning, right? That project there. Now this next one's going to be smaller. I think I'm going to go with, I'm going to go 16 inches wide. And I'm going to go 16 by 16. 16 by 16. 3/4 inches thick. Okay. Now, for this one, I'm going to bring in a graphic, and I'm going to trace that graphic. So we're going to import a bitmap because I don't have that graphic. I had it earlier, but I didn't save it. There's two graphics that I want. There's two or three that I want to trace, but one of them is going to be this Arrowhead design here. I'm going to go into the trace tool, turn off the fading, draw a box around this arrowhead, and click preview, apply, and close. Okay, I want this shape. I'm also going to bring in another image. It's a little bit of a, it's the same kind of arrowhead, but a little bit different. And I'm going to bring this up to 75, preview, apply, and close. And delete that image. Okay, I'm going to take this one. I'm going to import another image. Trace, fading off. Bring this up to 75 for me. Preview, apply, and close. Turn that off. Size that up. Let's bring in another set of feathers. Open up the trace tool. Fading off, first step, 75. Preview, apply, and close. Now 75 is my threshold for most images that I trace, between 50 and 75, and 90% of the image I trace, I just bring it up to 75 for a decent, good tracing. All right. Now, there are two scenes that, unfortunately, in my clip art, they were saved as Aspire files. So I need to retrace them, if you will. The first one is going to be this image here. And we're going to open up the trace tool. Going to draw a box around what I want to trace. Turn that fading off. I'm going to slide this up to 75. Preview, apply, and close. Get rid of the image. Okay. I'm moving these. These are graphics that I already have them traced and all, so I normally just have to drag and drop. But we're tracing now because, again, I'm not working in Aspire at the moment. I have another kind of river scene, mountain scene. Trace bitmap, turn the fading off, slide this up to 75, go a little bit. I'm actually going to go a little bit more than 75 on this one. We're going to back off. I'm going to go 80 on that, but I'm going to turn the noise filter up to about a 5 on this one. And preview, apply, and close. Let's get rid of that image. Now over here, there were some things. I want to ungroup this. And there were some things that I don't want in here. I want to remove these things. And I could have actually turned my noise filter up a lot more. Those square vectors right there, that's trash. So my noise filter could have got turned up a lot more and all. But what I want to do is I'm going to clean up this little left side here. I'm going to go into node editing, and I'm going to cut the vector. I'm cutting these end sections off and deleting them. And then I'll rejoin that with a closed vector. Same thing here. I'm cutting the vector here, delete, and rejoin with a smooth curve. Here as well, cutting the vector, delete, and join with a smooth curve. That square vector can get removed. And one more here. We're going to cut the vector here and here. And join with a smooth curve. Down here, cut it there and there. Delete and join with a smooth curve. Now the reason I'm doing this is because there was a bit of a kind of a watermark there that I wanted to get rid of. Okay, join with a smooth curve. Okay, now we're going to group that together, group, and size that up. Okay, now I'm going to, for this one, I think I want my arrowhead facing up. I don't know if there's any kind of superstition about it facing up or down, good luck, bad luck, anything like. I don't think there is. But I think I want it facing up, so I'm going to hit V for vertical while I'm in transform mode, and that should flip it upright. I want to size this up. I'd like to get as wide as that 16 as I can. And that's going to tell me about how tall I need my piece. So I really need to be about about 24 inches on my part. So I'm going to go 24 on the height. 24. And I'm going to center this on the board, because I'm going to end up cutting out the shape. Yes, Rodney, you can, if there's a certain area that you want to trace, when you're tracing an image, you can draw a box around it, and it'll trace anything that's in that box and not anything outside of it. All right, now, what I'd like is, I'd like to create a pretty cool scene. I'm going to do an offset. I don't think I need the offset, but I'm going to do an offset just so I have it. I'm going to do an offset outward 1/8 of an inch. Yeah, that should bring me close there. All right, let's go back into that tool. On my inner percentage radius, I'm going to kind of oh, that was too much. I want to go back. Let's see here. 24. 20. Okay, we're going to go there. Okay. All right. Let me know if we're buffering again. Okay. Okay. I'm kind of debating if I want to bring some more mountains in and bring this up. Because I'm not sure which mountain range I'd want. I'm going to go with, let's ungroup. And I'm going to go with this range. So I've got it selected. I'm going to group it back together. And I'm going to drag it in here. Let's get the star out of the way just for a moment. So let's move it, or the sun and sun rays. Let's move that over. All right. Got a few little vector, little. I'm going to put him back. Hold on a second. Undo and ungroup. And I had two vectors selected up here. Holding that shift key, turning those off, and regrouping, G for group, or we can use the group tool. Your choice. All right, let's get it back over here. That Control Z, that undo key, is a time saver. Learn that key. All right, let's size this up. Now, of course, it's going to be in the background, right? So it doesn't need to be that big. And the further things are away, the smaller they are. Let's see which side I want to be on. Okay, now I'm going to stretch this. I'm going to grab on here, I'm going to grab the lower node and stretch it down because I'm going to be trimming it and everything. But I wanted to add some additional mountain peaks and stuff. Now, Let me think. Let me think. All this lower stuff's going to be trimmed away, so it's only going to be this area here. And I'm kind of curious as to... All right, we'll leave that alone. We're not going to do that. All right, we'll leave that mountain range out for right now. Let's bring the sun back in here. And let's get it trimmed up. So basically, it's going to connect to here. We're going to do the same thing with our little offset and stuff that we always do. But I want to kind of get the size right. And I just want it kind of just bursting over the top here and everything. Okay, that'll be good. All right, so taking our, just like before, taking our mountain scene, we're going to ungroup it. We're going to select the outside vector that surrounds it, and we're going to offset that outward. And I'm actually going to go 1/4 of an inch on this one. No, I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch. I like my 1/8 of an inch. I'm a creature of habit. I'm going to offset outward 1/8 of an inch. I like a nice semi-close line. So let that offset. Now, that offset, I'm going to select it and turn it off and make sure there's nothing else selected. I'm just going to hit the delete key just in case there is any miscellaneous trash that got offset away. I'm just going to get rid of that, turn off that outside boundary and hit that delete key. Now I'm going to select my entire mountain scene again. And I'm going to turn off, hold that shift key. I'm going to deselect that outside boundary and I'm going to group my mountain scene back together. I'm going to select my sun here. I'm going to select my outside boundary. And I'm going to trim, clearing inside that boundary away. Once I do that, I'm going to delete that boundary. And this guy, we're going to stop at the mountain here. It's not going to go through the mountain, so we're going to delete that one. And, of course, this one out here we're going to delete, and here. Now, we still haven't trimmed outside of this boundary yet, okay? We've got some rays coming down here in the water. I do not want that. It would be nice for kind of like a reflection or whatever. But these little vectors here, those are kind of the glare on the water as it's running. I don't want these rays in here. So I'm actually going to get rid of those. Okay, make sure there's no rays or anything in there. Okay, make sure there's nothing over here. All right, good. All right, So, you guys still with me? My buffering? It doesn't look like I'm buffering on my side, so let me know. It says excellent connection this time, but let me know. Now, I need to clean up what's outside of my boundary, right? And it's going to be this inside boundary here. So this inside boundary here, we're going to ungroup it. Okay, that inside boundary. That's going to be my vector boundary. And I want to select my sun here and my mountain scene. They're going to be together. I'm going to group them together. Group. I'm going to select my inner boundary last. And I'm going to trim. But this time I'm actually clearing outside of the boundary. Anything outside of the boundary gets removed. Okay. All right. So this right now is looking at all these little vectors and everything, and it's collecting that vector data, that component data and everything. And it's determining what it's got to trim off and where it's got to redraw it back together. So the one thing that I did not do, I'm actually going to stop this procedure, and oh man, hopefully it doesn't crash. I'm going to stop this procedure. I'm hitting the little red stop X down here at the bottom because I forgot to do my offset. I know I have an offset on the outside. That has another purpose. When the software catches up with itself, first thing I'm going to do is save the work, but I need to create an offset for my trim boundary. So we've got to let it catch up to itself, its thinking process. It's going to take a second. Come, ka-dum-bum. I am kind of in a frozen state till it resets itself. I should have just let it calculate and then just did an undo, but I was hoping I caught it early enough. Come on, VCarve. Work with me, work with me. Oh. Don't you hate when that happens? Come on. Come on, come on, come on. It did not like that at all. Not going to waste time. All right. I'm not going to waste time. Bear with me a second. Let me... I'll keep an eye on it. If it catches up to itself, we'll continue on with it. But in the meantime, I'm going to... All right, U on the keyboard. Or sorry, V on the keyboard to flip that back up. Center. Offset outward 1/4 of an inch. Size that up. I'm going to do it right now while I'm here. I'm going to offset that inward 1/8 of an inch. That way I can use that boundary. Inward, not outward. Inward. That way I can use that boundary to trim. Let's take a look and see if... Yeah, it's still frozen. All right, let's go back. I know what scene that I'm using, so it's just going to be easy enough to go back into that scene. Trace. Draw a box around what I want. Click 75, preview, apply, and close. Size that up. Bring it down. Okay. Starburst. Bring that down. All right, one more time. Let's ungroup this. Select the outside vector, offset it outward 1/8 of an inch. Okay, it caught back up to itself finally. So we can continue there. I don't want to throw you guys off by jumping back and forth, but basically we are recreating this. So what our next step would have been was to select the entire vector, deselect, hold that shift key down, deselect this outside boundary and group everything back together. Select our sun and that outside boundary and trim, clearing everything inside of that boundary away. Okay. And then going through and deleting the vectors that we did not want. And stuff. Okay. And then our next step, which I'm going to go back to the other design for, was we needed to create the offset. The whole reason for me stopping that process was I wanted this to be offset inward by 1/8 of an inch. That's going to be my trim boundary. So when I'm trimming, okay, when I've got this selected and everything, and I'm selecting this inside boundary, I am trimming, clearing everything outside of that boundary away. This is where it was thinking when we stopped it earlier, but now we don't need to stop it because I have the vector that I was missing. That's what I want to trim to. So now it's going to take a minute to process this because it's got a lot of vectors to redraw. It's got to figure out how it's going to cut and then redraw that boundary together. And this is it, even though it's got to think and it's going to take time, it's much quicker than if I were to try to do this by hand with scissors and, you know, trim and make sure everything is connected and all. So even with this new one that I created, the boundary, so we'll get rid of that sun array there, but you know, we would select this grouped vector and that same inside boundary and trim. I don't need to do it twice. There's no reason for that. But it was easy. It was quick and easy to get it right back to where we were when we froze up and all that last time. Now, I'm just going to minimize that for now. This will take just a second to process. It's got to think about all those vectors, and I don't mind that part. But don't forget to save is absolutely right. While that's doing it, let's go ahead and ask some questions. Answer some questions. Would you do this as a carve or add colors to the finish? Yeah, Rodney. So this is going to get this arrowhead 24 inch by 16 inches wide is going to get cut out, the shape of it, to hang on a wall or what have you. And this scene, if you will, of this river, mountain range, and trees and stuff and all with this glaring sunbeam and all, sun rays and stuff, is going to be carved into this scene, like a little wall art, if you will. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would just paint it black, you know, or if I'd actually go in and paint different colors, the green trees and mountains and all that. That's a little bit, for me, that's a little bit overkill. I think a simple single color, it still creates a dramatic piece and everything. But I for sure, what am I trying to say? I for sure, me personally, I wouldn't paint it individual colors and stuff because I'm not a finisher. I'm really not good at finishing. I wish I had somebody that would finish my project for me. I know how to finish. I can teach how to finish. I don't like to paint, right? I don't like it. I just want to get it done with. I'm at that point where, you know, when I created the design, I created the carving. By the time it's done carving and I'm sanding and everything, I'm at that point where I'm ready to get it done. It's terrible. I'm ready to get it done and move it along and work on my next one. If I could hire somebody to do finishing and all, it would be moving along to their desk. They'd be finishing it. But you can, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. So this is still contemplating what needs to be done because there are a lot of vectors here. So it's really thinking about it. But while that's thinking and everything, I want to kind of use this one as some concepts and stuff. There's another image that I thought about using in this arrowhead scene, and you know, I have the feathers and all that stuff, but one of the images I want to kind of trace. Same, it's the same 75 for me, threshold and everything. But But this scene here, kind of this Sundance, if you will, I wanted to incorporate this in the design. Where he kind of like takes over the whole centerpiece there, where he's in the foreground, right, and everything behind him. And again, it's a trim just like before, just like we did with the Eagle and Lady Liberty and all. We would create his outside boundary and we would trim everything away on him. We would still have a little bit of this river scene. I wouldn't want to cover the river scene up too much, but I thought that would add a cool element of that foreground into it. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. If I were to carve this, just the Native American sun dancing, if I were to carve that, I'll put a flat depth in of 1/8 of an inch for right now. Just to kind of get a visual of what it would look like. Other one is still working on its trim. That would be the foreground of that image. And I kind of think that would look pretty cool. With that in the utmost front, the foreground of this arrowhead. And then that mountain scene in the back with the sun rays in the in the distance and everything. I actually think that would look pretty sharp. And that will be the next step if it finishes calculating. So it's moving along. We got 1%. Woohoo! It's counting on, but come on, Vetric, you can do it. I have faith in you. I don't want to do any trimming or anything with this because that would just tax my CPU and it would just cause everything to kind of freeze up. But I think with him in the foreground and everything around him, removed, where it's just him, with this scene in the background and the sun and stuff, I think that would look pretty sharp. So that is a thought. That is a concept. That is one of the concept pieces. Now, 2%. So while it's calculating, I'm not going to waste time. We gotta move on. We'll let that finish up because that was the last step before we create the toolpath. So we'll let it finish up. But I'm going to be working over here, and we're going to change up our scenes. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the arrowhead for right now. I'm going to keep this vector here because I'm actually going to use it in the other one. So I'll just copy and paste it over in just a minute. But while that is calculating and stuff, we're going to create another piece and just show you, things that we can do to create, different concepts. Think about clocks, and stuff. I'm gonna, in my clip art, custom images, custom images. I'm actually gonna oh, that's not gonna let me move anything. All right, so in this one, we're going to use this river scene, size it up. I'm going to bring this down. Not that far. Dadgummit. How are we doing? Are we buffering? Doing good? All right. I just noticed that you got a vector validator. I have been getting that a lot since version 11. Do you get that a lot more too? Well, Gary, on the vector validator, it's just basically you're going to, it's going to throw out that warning if you have any overlaps, duplicates, intersections, not duplicates, but intersections, which duplicates would cause intersections. But you're going to get that, and it's just saying, hey, do you want to clean up your work and get rid of these that might potentially cause an issue, or do you want to continue anyway? The vector validator was not in versions 9. It started in 9.5, if I'm not mistaken. So 9.5, 10, 10.5, and 11, the vector validator tool became, prevalent. But we definitely, it's not a matter of getting it more in version 11. It's just, getting used a lot. All right, so let's see where we are here. 11%. So it's crawling along. It's trying to read all those vectors and stuff, and that's fine. On this one here, I'm going to size this down to fit on the board. I don't want to have to do any trimming on it. Size it down. I'm going to center it. Let me get back over here. I'm going to center it. Left to right. Now, this could have been another scene where I use this guy here, where he's standing on the shoreline over here in the corner of this river scene with the sun coming up in the background of the mountains and stuff, but I think I'm going to reserve that for later. On this one, I am going to bring in a mountain range. And let's see here. Been asked to do a deer mount with an arrowhead. You're giving me some great ideas. Yeah, Ronnie, there you go. For sure. I think the mountain range that I'm going to use is going to be this one. I think it's going to be off in the distance like that. Yeah. So we're going to trace this. Again, I'm going to draw a box around what I want to trace. I'm going to turn the fading off. I'm going to slide this up to 75. Again, that's kind of my threshold. And preview, apply, and close. Delete the image. And then I'm going to bring this in. Now this scene is going to be off. It's going to be a big, not too far in the distance, but it's a big mountain range off in the hills, right? And this is kind of a river running brook and all. Now, I need to blend this together, and I'm simply going to blend it together by selecting the, oh, it was already all ungrouped. Hold on a second. I'm going to select all of this, and I'm going to create an offset around it. Actually, stand by a second. What's going to be in the front? The trees are going to be in the front. Mountain's going to be behind the trees. Yeah, okay. Yes. I'm going to create an offset around it, 1/8 of an inch. It's going to warn me about overlaps and intersections most likely. And the offset is just the trimming boundary.
18%. Holy cow. This class has got to end at 10 o'clock. It doesn't have to end, but I want it to end for you guys so y'all can get some sleep. But so hopefully that 18%, hopefully it starts climbing a little bit faster than it is. Let's see here. Some new faces. Alan Lee, how you doing? Yeah. Oh, you're absolutely 100% correct. I'm going to stop that. Oh, see, that one stopped fast. It is supposed to be outward, not inward. Good catch, John Thompson. Good catch. All right, so that offset needs to be outward, not inward. That was a good catch. I was wondering why it was taking so long. It shouldn't take that long to do a simple offset. But it was trying to figure out how it was going to do the inside. All right, so let's is it 2 that I froze up now? Okay. All right. One more time. Let's go outward, offset. Beautiful catch, John. Thank you. Good catch. We're going outward an 1/8 of an inch. We're just creating that boundary, that surrounding boundary that we can use to trim our mountain range to. Now I want to bring, after it creates that boundary, I want to bring that mountain range in just a little bit so I don't have to cut off anything that's outside of my design. I might leave it. I don't know. You can do it. 21%. Holy cow. That's insane. Trimming, manually or automatic, is time consuming for sure. All right. When it creates that boundary, that offset boundary, we want to make sure that we deselect it. So we have select new option chosen. So when it creates this new vector, it's going to select that new vector and any other offset that it created. We want just the outside boundary. So we're going to deselect the outside boundary, and anything else that is still pink, we're going to hit the delete key and we're going to remove that. We're going to delete it because we don't want those other offsets in there and stuff. And so the all right, bear with me. It's I don't see an offset created yet. Here it comes. I was wondering. I was like, wait a minute now. It's a calculating. All right, now, once again, we're going to deselect that outside boundary, and anything else that's still pink, we're going to hit delete on the keyboard to delete it. We don't want it. We're going to select our mountain range, and we're going to bring it in just a little bit. I'm just going to bring it in to fit on the board. So I'm just going to reduce it inward. That'll work.
All right, with it selected first, we're going to select that outside boundary last, and we're going to trim, clearing everything inside that boundary away. Okay, we're going to let it do that trim and redraw that. Our other trim is at 26%. It is working hard. There's a lot of vectors for it to work with, so I can understand. It's a patient, it's a waiting game. Hurry up and wait kind of thing, you know, and all. So same thing here. There's not a whole lot of vectors here that it's got to deal with, but I don't know why it's... I don't know why the second one is thinking as hard as it should. All right. Now, these are going to be the only designs that we're working with and stuff. There's one more element that I want to add to this one. And the whole purpose of tonight's class is to show you that we can bring multiple things together to create something, you know, cool and awesome. I wish that Aspire didn't buffer. So, because I have all these graphics, I didn't have to trace anything. I have all these graphics that I could have brought in to show you a wide variety of different things. There was another flag design that I wanted to show you, that I wanted to share with you, besides that torn flag one. But these two guys here, the arrowheads, if I would have known they were going to take that long, I would have pre-planned ahead of the game on these. They really shouldn't take that long to calculate. I don't know why. It's just struggling. There's not a lot of vectors on this one. I don't know why this one's struggling. It shouldn't. And it might just be, might be struggling because the other one is. Can you please repeat the V-bit that you use in these designs? So I'm using the white side 1541 60 degree V-bit, and on that flag, the text is the white side SC50, Sierra Charlie 50. That was used as well. For the text of that flag, the white side Sierra Charlie 50 was used as well. All right. Well, I'd like to have at least one finished Arrowhead project. Okay, so for some odd reason, this one did not trim. Why did it not trim? Okay. Well, now, interesting. Super interesting. It stopped itself. I'm going to go File, Save As. I'm going to save this. Arrowhead 1. Just in case. But... and I'm going to call this one Arrowhead 2. Or it's not an arrowhead. I'm just going to call this River Scene 1. Okay. Let's stay out of that one for a minute. Let's come back here on this one. And I'm really curious as to why it did not trim as it should. There we go. Look how fast it did it that time. Crazy, right? Holy cow. What's the deal with that? Okay. So that's exactly what we wanted it to do. There's our trim. Okay. Now, I'm going to V-carve this, but then I'm also going to V-carve it with that Indian figure. We're going to do a trim on that. I want to see, I need your opinion. You tell me which way looks the best, okay? Let's get that figure over here. I'm going to copy this. Copy. I can't believe how fast it trimmed that time. And paste. Okay. That's crazy. All right, let's create a toolpath. I'm going to use a 22-degree V-bit on this because of the small vectors, the very small vectors and all. I need as much depth and definition as possible. But there is going to be a flat depth on this sun here, right? Because that's going to be a big, deep hole right there. So I'm going to go just 1/4 of an inch. And so we're going to use that 22-degree V-bit, and I'll use an 1/8 inch end mill where I can. We're going to calculate that. There's a couple of those little figure eights in the river here, but I'm not going to worry about cleaning them up right this second. We got to wrap this up with a finished project. Yes, Rodney says I probably could have used the scissors faster. All right, so if we preview that visible toolpath, okay, that's the scene. Let's turn the color off so we can see the carving, right? So we can see the carving and the detail and everything. And if we turn the color back on, you know, and now let's go in and do our profile cut. Now, not bad. There's something missing. For me, there's something missing up here. It might be just, hell, I might make a clock out of up here and all, but so that would be kind of one scene, right? You know, there could probably be a little bit more in the background here. There could be something more. I'm not sure what, but there could be something more. Now, if I take this design and I incorporate this into that, so let's bring that here, and I want to size him off to the side. Now, I'm going to take him and I'm going to offset him outward that 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to select that boundary and turn it off, deselect it, meaning hold the shift key and click on it. I'm going to hit delete to get rid of any other offsets that were created. And then I'm going to come back in and, oh, the river scene was not grouped together. So I'm going to undo that. Let me undo that really quickly. Before I offset him, I want that river scene grouped back together. It was not grouped together because of the trim, right? So let's group it back together. All right, because that would be a nightmare. All right, one more time. Offset him outward, 1/8 of an inch. Continue. Hold that shift key down and deselect that outer boundary and hit delete on any of the other offsets that were created, all these other pink items. And then reselect him and deselect the boundary. Group him back together. And now select our mountain scene and select this outside boundary, and we're going to trim, clearing inside the boundary away. Look how fast that is. Holy cow. All right. And we're going to delete that boundary. Now let's create a V-carve toolpath. Maybe a couple birds in the top. Yeah, like an eagle or something. You know, it could be a spirit eagle, you know, like it's just like this big eagle head up here that's kind of like, you know, often, you know, the spirit animal or something. Sunbird, you know. Could be something. For sure. This is almost done calculating. Reset the preview and preview the visible toolpaths. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah. Most definitely. Right? So, let's turn this to the side so you can see it. Now, I could mix it up a little bit. We could take, and for the last little step on this, let's see here. I could have done, just so you know, in that foreground, I could have done this scene, right? In that foreground. That could have been a cool scene too, right here in the front. Instead of the Native American Sundance, right? We could have had that. That could have been an option. But what I want to see is if I were to bear with me. I know he is here somewhere. Yeah, he's got some cool detail. All right, so trace. All right. I could, like I was talking about, like the spirit animals or whatever. I'm going to move the sun. All right, very quickly. Um, he's grouped together. He's grouped together. So let me grab this whole middle scene, group it back together. With that middle scene selected, I'm going to create an offset. Outward, 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to deselect that boundary. It's rinse and repeat for a lot of this. Hit delete on any other offset that was created. Select the eagle here. Select that boundary. Trim, clearing inside of the boundary. Delete that boundary away. We're going to get rid of this and this and I'm just going to use the scissors to trim those two together. So I'll use the scissors. I got to ungroup the Native American. First of all, before I ungroup him, yeah, okay, I'm going to ungroup him. And he's going to be in the foreground, so we'll trim away this, that, and delete that. Okay. All right. Let's V-carve that, see what that looks like. These are just all concept designs. So V-carve toolpath, 1/4 inch flat depth. Yeah, 1/4 inch flat depth will be fine for this. Continue anyway. There's some vectors overlapping again in that river. All right, there are 2 open vectors. I'm actually going to find those. I want to close them up. So I want to select all open vectors. And then I want to zoom to the selected. I just told it to select it. I want to see what those are. So they're just lines. So it's just trash. Okay, never mind. So go back and V-carve. Now, we're going to do the V-carve 2 ways. And this is our final one for the end of the night. So we're going to calculate this. This will be option number 1. We're going to click continue. I don't think way 2 is going to look very good. But Harvey, did something happen? Did what happen? Let me know. What your question is? Okay, let's reset the preview and preview the visible toolpath. Cool idea. Probably needs a little bit of tweaking. right? Maybe bringing the head down behind the mountains a little bit. These feathers got something. It needs a little something. It's not perfect by any means. It needs a little something. Not sure what that something would be, but cool concept. But it needs. There's a few things missing. You see he didn't trim properly around the trees here, right? You see he got carved into the trees, so he needs to be behind those trees. Those feathers need to be hidden behind those trees. So in the vector trimming, when that 1/8 inch offset was created, for some reason he didn't trim all the way, as he should have. Not sure why. But, there's some things here that need to be addressed, right? So if I were to look back at the offset only got created on, part of the design here. It didn't get created on the other half. So when I deleted, when I remember, if you recall, when I said deselect the outside boundary and hit delete on anything else, while the other half of the boundary was still selected, because they're kind of two separate things. They didn't create a full vector all the way. They didn't connect. One stopped here on the left side of his headdress, and the other stopped on the right side. So that they weren't connected. So there should have been, to be honest, this vector here should have been node edited. This is the final step, and we're done. It should have been cut. And over here on this side, somewhere, anywhere, I don't care where, that should have been cut. And if you notice, the vector kind of stops here, right? And over here, it kind of stops there. But my 1/8 of an inch offset didn't connect these vectors around like they kind of should have. So cutting those vectors, that I'm going to undo that. That wouldn't help anything. What should have happened is when the scene was selected, our Native American here should have been in that selection when we did the offset. The eagle was the new add-in. So all of this should have been selected and grouped together as one item, so that when that offset, that 1/8 of an inch, and in this case I'm going to go 3/16, 1875, just a little bit wider. But that way, when that offset was created, it would create a full boundary all the way around as one. And where I made the mistake was I didn't pay attention that it created separate boundaries. It wasn't a big enough offset. Here, when this offset is created, if I deselect this boundary and hit delete again, on the offsets, if I select that boundary, you should see that it goes all the way around our design. It's one continuous vector. That way, when we select our eagle and we select that continuous vector and we trim, clearing inside of it, it gets rid of, those feathers and everything. Okay? It gets rid of everything. And then when we create the V carving on this, it would look a little bit better, but still could use something. Now, I used a river scene as kind of my main scene, but this could have been a mountain range. We could have done, I've got a howling wolf. Think of that, like a wolf is the foreground where the Native American is here. We could have a wolf in that foreground, or the deer could have been in the foreground, and then we have that back scene. Could be anything, right? So we're creating a piece of wall art that has the shape of this arrowhead. And the scene that we create within that wall art is up for, could be anything. Could be, we could do anything, really. Let's preview that scene. And let's cut it out. So at least this time now our trees, our eagle head kind of gets carved like he's behind it a bit. And, it could be something along those lines. I've got a, in the clip art, I've got this wolf. If I were to take, really last thing, if I were to take this whole scene and move it out of the way for a minute and take this and put it in here, and I could almost create it where he's outside of there, but let's do a V-carve on that. No flat depth is really necessary, but that's okay. We'll do it. And I'll keep it at the 22 degree V-bit for right now, just for preview purposes. The Indian scene, the river scene, needed the 22 degree V-bit because all the little leaves and the feathers and the leaves and everything. But this wolf scene is kind of like a wolf with its shadow, its spirit in the background. You'll see when it carves. And then we'll say goodnight for tonight, guys. It's been a long night for all of us. Come on. Reset that preview and preview that visible toolpath. So, we have this scene here. Now, I could just get rid of the back shadow, that overgrown shadow here and everything, and just have the foreground of the wolf on the mountain of the rocks and all, but it's a pretty cool little scene and all. But, something like that could have been in the upper part of the arrowhead, It could have even, been, sized and incorporated in, and we could even created the boundary where it actually is part of the wolf. So the arrowhead, like it's actually carving outside, we could trim. And on this case, if we trimmed that there, it would be the same. We would actually, that would be our wolf would be our boundary there, this wolf. So on him, we would create an offset outward. And this is it. I keep saying this is it, but we could create an offset outward, and I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch, not far on this one, 1/8 of an inch outward. And on that, here it comes. Select, hit delete, select our vector here, select the vector there, and trim, clearing inside of it. And then deleting our boundary. And, oops. deleting that boundary away. Not counting the inside vector here and all, but kind of did this one a little crazily. This bear with me. That and hold on. That and that offset outward. Stand by. Almost there. Almost there. Okay. Turn that off. Delete. Now, this inside vector here, that would be a pocket cut. We could do it as a V-carve kind of pocket, but we'll do it as a pocket. Yeah, we'll do it as a pocket. Pocket cut, only going an 1/8 inch deep. I definitely want an 1/8 inch end mill and a 1/4 inch end mill. I definitely want an 1/8 inch end mill. There we go. Select and a 1/4. Select. Now, imagine we could have had a whole other scene attached to this, right? But let's calculate that really quickly. So it would have made it even more cool, and not just so empty. But let's reset that preview and preview the visible toolpath. That's going to create this recess, if you will. Okay. And then our wolf gets V-carved. Yeah, we'll put a flat depth on him. The wolf gets V-carved. Not technically, a 60 degree would be fine for that. 22, it might be a little overkill, but the flat depth is helping. And then our final, come on, you can do it. One more pass. You can do it. There we go. Preview the visible toolpath. He's getting carved. And then our final cutout. Profile cut. Calculate. Preview the visible toolpath. Right? And so, you know, there could have been more in this scene besides the wolf, right? Besides the wolves, there could have been that river scene. That wolf could have been the top, you know, in the background and all, but kind of creates that, you know, that element. There could have been a lot more here. There could have been a saying like at the bottom. We could have made that smaller, and we could have done a text such as the Great Spirit Prayer, right? That was, you know, the Lakota chief, Sioux chief, Yellow Lark. But the Great Spirit Prayer could have been, you know, that whole bottom piece, right? We could have carved some text in there. Those kind of things. So the whole point of tonight's class is to get the juices flowing. I know the juices aren't flowing after 3 hours and you're tired and ready to go, but hopefully you've got some potential ideas of things that you could do. You know, it just gives you some thoughts. Now, as far as Arrowhead, deer mount, and stuff like that, you know, that's you're your deer head's going to cover the arrowhead, so I'm not sure what kind of detail would be on it, you know, in the background and stuff like that, but you know, it could be something. And as far as what my choice of wood would be for the carving, if I'm going to be painting it, right? So I'm going to use probably a poplar or a select pine. If I wasn't going to paint it, I was just going to do a stain, you know, with a darkness and stain, you know, I might go with a maple, or even a walnut or cherry. Maple, walnut, and cherry are kind of my go-to woods and everything. I don't carve in oak and all, but if I'm going to paint it, like if it's going to be full-on color and everything, then I'm not going to paint. Excuse me. I'm not going to paint. Too much like my. I'm going to go with poplar or select pine. Now, that flag that I made with the Liberty and the Eagle head and the songs and all, that could have been a nice cherry piece with the black painted text and, you know, in Eagle and all. That could have been a nice looking piece. I wouldn't have gone dark with that. I wouldn't have gone with walnut or anything like that. You know, it would have been like a maple or a cherry and everything. But that's pretty much it. So I've got to go. You've got to go get some rest. Hopefully you can, you know, with everything that we have done and, you know, brought into the designs and stuff, hopefully you kind of get the idea, the concept and stuff. And let me just hit save on this. And let's make sure that the live class, I'll open that back up to kind of finish off this discussion. Open, open, open. But with the things that we put together, hopefully you got something out of it that you can kind of think about, you know, think about cool and creative ways that we can put things together to create some really nice looking pieces, you know. I think something like this sign here is pretty hot. I think that, you know, someone would like that. But anyhow, everybody, thank you for spending this much time. We really ran over, so I appreciate you. Sorry for the trouble that we had in the beginning of this video. I think I'm going to edit this live and cut that part out, all those hassles and all. But at least we made it through. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining me. If you have any questions or anything, you can ask them in the chat of the video, or the, you know, the comment section of the video, and I'll answer. All right. So think about that. Think about elements that you can pull and bring together. And just to give you one last little look in everything, I'm going to kind of give you kind of a glimpse. Let's go into view extra large icons here. And so I want you to just kind of look at some of the graphics and things, that could have been used with those arrowheads, right? There's all kinds of different graphics and things. You know, those are just kind of concept pieces and stuff. The skull, I didn't get a chance to do that one. I wanted to do that one tonight too, but the skull with the Torin flag, they were going to be tied together, dadgummit, but I missed that one. But, you know, just some of the graphics that I planned on using tonight that we didn't get to. But at least we got, you know, part way. But hopefully you got some wheels spinning and some things going on in your mind that, oh, this, I could try this. And just start throwing things together that makes sense, you know. I had the Liberty Bell, the Statue of Liberty, Mount Rushmore, an eagle or an eagle head, and the American flag with this America the Beautiful text, and those kind of items kind of surrounding them and stuff. And where this concept came from is a very cool monument piece in, I believe it's in Colorado. It's at the very top of Pikes Peak. And if I were to show you that image, which I think would make a beautiful model one day, but it is, if I were to bring this tab over into the window, this is my last bit of the discussion here. Let me click on here. Let's go in here. This is a monument piece at the top of what's called Pikes Peak in Colorado, and it's would make a beautiful model. But it's got these mountain scenes, the Liberty Bell, right? It's got, this nice, kind of farm scene. Mount Rushmore, the Pilgrims and immigrants and all that came over for freedom. The Statue of Liberty, the signing of the Declaration, Christopher Columbus, the New York Bridge, So a very cool sign, and you see how they put all of these elements together. And this plaque is on this big monument. It's huge, right at the very top of Pikes Peak. This is what it looks like, in its entirety and everything. But you see how they put all those different elements together to really emphasize the design, if you will, and everything. So, yeah, that's where that concept of where this concept kind of came to be. Just that's just where that concept came from. And everything. One day I may turn around and turn that Pikes Peak monument piece into an actual 3D model. I don't know. But anyway, y'all have a wonderful evening. This is the last time. Good night. And until next time, I'll see you soon.